elderly pro-life activist has been sentenced to prison after protesting in front of an abortion clinic peacefully back in 2020. 75-year-old Paula, or as her friends know her, Paulette Harlow, is already on house arrest and has extensive medical issues. She worries incarceration could further cause her health to decline. Here to discuss is former Planned Parenthood Clinic director, Abby Johnson. Abby, welcome. She is one of many other peaceful pro-life protesters, including, I want to mention, Heather Idoni, who is 59 years old. She was put in solitary confinement and for 22 days, which is violating the Nelson Mandela Act, which says you can only put someone in solitary confinement for 15 days because it's just too inhumane. She suffered a stroke, and then they just put her back in the slammer until her sentencing.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to say I am not someone who believes that this is the most effective form of activism. There's many other types of activism that are much more effective. Our ministry alone, and then there were none, has saved 700 abortion clinic workers from working in the abortion industry, has shut down over 45 abortion clinics peacefully, not trespassing into abortion facilities. There's other abortion pro-life organizations that have saved thousands of babies by not trespassing. These people did trespass into an abortion facility. They did do something illegal. And while I respect their position, I respect their activism, it's not something that I think that we should continue, something we should be doing. However, the main story here is that the DOJ has weaponized their position, and there is unfair treatment going on here with the Biden administration, because here is the main story, Rachel. There is a young activist named Whitney Durant who vandalized a Bowling Green, Kentucky pregnancy center, okay? Vandalized it, spray painted "Abort God," all these violent, terrible things all over this pregnancy center, did significant damage to the pregnancy center, violated the FACE Act, the same thing that these people are being held accountable for, got 2 years probation, no jail time, no prison time, and a $2,000 fine, okay? Now, meanwhile, these people have been sitting in a federal prison and are possibly receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines. That shows that there is something political at play here, and there is an unequal balance of justice.
Yes. Well, there were abortion clinics in which there were Molotov cocktails thrown into pro-life centers, I should say, by Jane's Revenge, which is in a domestic terrorist group. We don't know what's happened with that. I doubt they're going to get the same sentences that these, again, peaceful. These are non-violent people. They may have trespassed into there, but they are non-violent, many of them elderly, many of them with health problems. I will also say to you, Abby, when the pro-Palestine protesters went into St. Patrick's on the holiest of days, that is also a violation of, and they disrupted the mass. That's a violation of the FACE Act. Nothing happened to them as well. It's the two-tiered system that you're talking about that I think has people up in arms, and also, I mean, just throwing the books at these people. And I don't think it makes us look good as a country when this is how we treat our humanitarian, human rights activists.
Well, particularly the elderly. Look, these people, 75-year-old woman, she's not going to harm anyone, okay? And even though these people did trespass, they're not harming anyone. They're trying to save the lives of our most innocent, okay? I mean, like, let's get a grip, okay? They're not out there trying to harm anyone. These pro-Palestinian protesters, they are harming people. I mean, let's get real. They are harming people. People are being harmed during these protests.
Well, and property is being damaged. We just had a segment on it just a couple minutes ago. But the point is, again, I think this is a political issue. It's not pro-life versus pro-choice, although that's clearly on the ballot. I think people are very concerned about these two tiers of justice, that Joe Biden is weaponizing the justice system and law enforcement against his political and ideological enemies. I don't think we can question that anymore when we see this, the January 6th, the way the January 6th protesters were treated versus, the Antifa and BLM protesters. And again, last word, quickly.
And if any of us could be next. If you are
That's right.
against what this administration believes in, any of us could be next.
That's right. It's not that it can happen to you. It is already happening to American citizens, not just Donald Trump. Abby Johnson, thank you for coming on. And again, I respect what you say. There are better methods, but that still doesn't take away what's happened to these elderly people. Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.